So I'm here with Jeanell Greene. How's it going today, Jeanell?
Good, Maddie. How are you?
Doing well. I'm doing swell. You're all the way over on the other side of the country compared to where I'm at. I'm on the East Coast, you're in the West Coast. So
Yep, I am in Vancouver, Canada. It's very wet in this mid-November day, but it's to be expected, I guess. Better than snow.
it's snowing here, so that's the difference. But
Yeah.
thank you for taking time to talk to me today. And
Yeah, my
you're
pleasure.
doing a lot of great things and a lot of cool things in relation to men's mental health. So why don't you just kind of give a brief overview of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, well, my name is Jeanell Greene. I've been happily married for 19 years. As I mentioned, I live in Vancouver. And I work as I guess formally as a relationship coach, but if you talk to any of my clients, they'll tell you I'm so much more than that. Um, what I'm really passionate about is marriage, love, family. I grew up in a great home. Long story short, I had really great role models growing up. I'm Filipino, so we're very family oriented. And then when I was 9, my dad cheated on my mom with my mom's best friend who lived in our basement, and he left. And so that was sort of the beginning of my journey. And, you know, um, yeah, that was a really, really hard time for us. My parents were separated for about 2 years. And that entire time, my mom was basically praying for a miracle for my dad to come home. And funny enough, 2 years later, my dad got sick and was kind of forced to come home because he couldn't work. So his girlfriend basically kicked him out. And he was on the list for a kidney transplant. And during that time, he obviously was very remorseful to my mom and, did his best to redeem himself. And so he asked my mom for forgiveness and to take him back and let him come home. And my mom said yes. She, wanted she was really committed to her kids. I was 9, my sister was 6, and my brother was 3 at the time. She was really committed that her kids get to know their dad. And she didn't want us to not have a dad or that sort of male influence. So yeah, she invited him back, and the beautiful thing is she never resented him for it. She never brought it up. She never hung it over his head. She never withdrew her love. She just fully committed to this vow she made. And so, yeah, my dad got his transplant, became a better father, better husband, found God, you know, best case scenario. And yeah, 13 years later, he passed away, which is when one thing I didn't know at the time is, when you get someone else's organ, right? When you get a transplant, it's not a forever fix. It's basically you're just buying more time. So once that organ, is done doing its thing, the body just decays and you either get another transplant or you go on dialysis. But yeah, my dad passed away at 51, and at that time I was 24. And I thought that I was complete with my dad's death and what had happened with my dad. And, it was a peaceful departure. We were all there to support him. But as I was going through relationships, and at that time, again, 24, I'm like, okay, this is around the time that I really should settle down, get married, right? Because now my dad, the male figure in my life was gone. It was like, okay, how do I replace that or how do I fill that gap? And so I was on this hunt to find like the man. And I realized in that process that I actually there was a lot to heal still from my dad's, you know, um, behavior that affected me as a 9-year old. And I thought that I had forgiven him and that I was good with it. But as I started dating and I started to deal with all the anxiety and the fears and just my own behavior and my own sort of reaction to in these relationships, I realized that I had a lot of work to do. So that's really where I started my journey was during that time. And then I went through a divorce with that man. And I realized that I had just kind of jumped into this relationship without really, really thinking it through. And in hindsight, they say hindsight's 2020. In hindsight, I really saw that I didn't get married for the right reasons. And I think a lot of people fall, I'm learning that a lot of people fall in this category, that they commit to something because they love them, but not really realizing what does it mean to be married? Like, what does that take? And, we fall in love with the romance of marriage and all that, but we don't realize, like, it takes something to be in a marriage with someone else who's very different from you. And if you haven't healed your inner, emotional wounds from your parents or self-confidence issues, you're gonna sabotage that shit like no other. And I didn't realize, I didn't know why I was being the way I was being, and I didn't know why I was choosing the men I was choosing. And so I really had to do the work um, for myself. And at the end of the day, I took responsibility for that relationship and I said to my ex, like, listen, I'm so sorry for blaming you for, this relationship. Because I was pretty bitter. I was really bitter. I was like, I felt like he promised that he would be the kind of husband I wanted, but really had no intention. It was kind of like I was just being sold. I was being sold the promise and the dream, but he really fell flat on that. But yeah, I think the miracle or the miracle of the story is that when you take responsibility and stop blaming other people for your situation, there's power there. And so because of that, I said to him, listen, I'm taking full responsibility for my part. You're a great guy. You're just not for me. Square peg round hole. So, yeah, we got divorced and I think it costed us $80. And we went to the divorce courts together. We signed the papers together. We went out for dinner. It was a very amicable divorce, even though he was very, against the divorce. But that was really hard because, first of all, I'm Catholic. So I had to deal with my own, I had to reconcile my own values and morals around divorce and what are my parents going to think and what is the church going to think? Right? Just the whole like, what are people going to think? So I've
Sounds
had,
like the cheapest divorce in history, by the way.
yes, yes, it was. And so, a lot of my clients are going through this. A lot of, I actually just have a new client right now. And when he came to me, he was waiting for divorce papers and he was just so anxious, feeling so guilty, like such a failure. And now he's like, he's good. But, his biggest fear was, how is this going to affect my daughter? And well, actually, not even that. It was, I am ruining my daughter's life, is basically his mentality. And, we've been really working together because I said, it doesn't have to be that way. You have it in your mind that it has to be that way because you've seen it over and over again around you. But I guarantee you, if you follow my process, it doesn't have to go that way. And so he is now actually open to receiving. He hasn't gotten the papers yet. He's still waiting. But he's actually now like, she wants to serve me. That's fine. She can serve me. I'm going to still stand for my marriage. I'm going to still be a great dad. I'm going to protect my daughter. And so I've been really working with him to make sure his mental space is empowered so that, because this woman is quite manipulative, she's also very troubled, very traumatized in her childhood. So when you're dealing with someone who has a lot of trauma, they do some pretty weird and funky behavior. And so you kind of have to be able to kind of roll with it and more importantly, not take it personally, right?
Mm.
Because I believe hurt people. And this woman is just taking this man for a spin and he's going for the spin. And so I'm really trying to help him stay grounded, help him not get sucked into the people pleasing because he's quite codependent on her too. And whenever she's happy, he's happy. Whenever she's unhappy, he's unhappy. And I'm, trying to get him to break that cycle. So there's a lot of work. And, for him, he grew up with a mom who was suicidal and had mental health issues his whole life. And then his sister died, and then his dad died, and then he had cancer. Like this man has gone through so much. And he is just the most sweetest, most kindest. gentlest man. And and so that's I'm a big advocate for men. I think that men are misunderstood. I think men oftentimes it's not their fault because they were never taught how to be the kind of man that so many women expect these days. And I think with feminism and women becoming more independent, becoming more vocal, becoming a force to be reckoned with. And I think sometimes that's not necessarily a good thing. And so I think for men have their work cut out for them. And so I believe that I'm the perfect person to help kind of be that guy, that translator, that a lot of my clients call me their big sister who kind of look out for them. So yeah. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay. Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but I
Yeah.
wanted to talk a little bit about your mom and your dad. I think, you told me about this when we were talking on the phone before the podcast, but I think your mom forgiving your dad was a, I think it was unbelievable, was an unbelievable display of forgiveness. And I just wanted to ask you, um, maybe your thoughts on why your mom um, forgave him and sort of, you said like she never gave up on the marriage and she was so committed to it and stuff like that. Like that, that seems uncommon today, men or
Yeah.
women. And you talked about marriage, and we could talk about that more about kind of the way we look at it now. But could you talk a little bit about like what you think your mom's mindset was
Yeah.
around that?
My mom's an interesting cat. Uh, well, first of all, I think my mom has a deep connection to God. I think that she saw my dad, that the opportunity of, do I take him back or not, as part of her perhaps soul's journey, almost like a test. And I think, to be honest, I think it's because my dad was like really, really great up until that point. So they had, let's say 8 to 10 years, really solid years. And listen, my parents fought a lot, but they talked a lot, they danced, they sang a lot, they had a business together. We were a family and a family that fought, but we were always a family. We, went to church together. Like, it was that sort of very traditional Catholic family until that happened. So it was almost, and my mom and I talk about this all the time, and it was almost like he had a change of personality. And
Okay.
some Christians may say that's the devil, or I don't know what I believe around what happened to my dad. I just know that he was not the same man that my mom fell in love with at that time, whether it was a spell he was under or whatever. But I
He was
think
he was
that when
potentially lost. He was maybe a
yeah,
lost
there was
lost at that time.
something off, but I think my mom could see through that. She could see, she knew his heart. And especially when he got sick, he became very fragile emotionally, physically. My mom felt really sorry for him, to be honest, because he had no one. And he was like losing a lot of weight, and when your kidney shuts down, you start turning yellow, you start turning jaundice.
Yeah.
So you could see him physically deteriorating. And, my mom, like I said, our culture is all about family, and my mom chose to see the best. She always sees the best in people.
Mm.
And I don't know, she just decided that, and again, we were really young. So she, wanted, and this is another thing. My mom grew up without a dad.
Hmm. So she didn't want that for you guys.
Yeah. She's only
Hmm.
met her dad twice, like act like literally twice. He came to visit one time when she was, I think she said 15 or 18. And she met him the second time when she was leaving Philippines to come to Canada. That's it. So I think, and she got teased a lot as a child for not having a dad. So I think that played a lot into I'm not going to put my kids through that. And I was like, it's funny. I was actually thinking about this last night, how, on one hand, a lot of, I understand why women leave marriages. It's like, oh, he's not good for us. He's not good for the kids. Like, I understand that. And that, like, I need to do this for me and right? Like that I need to protect my peace. I get that. But I think a lot of women, and I say women because the the proportion of men versus women who are filing for divorce, it used to be more men, now it's more women that are filing for divorce. I don't think people think this through very well.
Yeah.
And, as someone who's been through it, right?
Yeah.
You're just like, I just want the pain to go away. I just want him to go away. I just want all of this to go away. And they think divorce is the only option, but they
Right.
don't realize what that means emotionally, family wise, financially. People come to me, they're like, oh, Jeanell, I can't afford you. And I'm like, and you can afford a divorce lawyer? Don't you,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you don't think you can afford me, never mind going through divorce. That's like two households and this guy that I was telling you, my client, he's paying for all their expenses. Their house, like I think the wife doesn't really work. So he's managing two homes and all the bills for the daughter, and she wants to go shopping. This dad just gives and gives and gives. And meanwhile, he's being sucked dry. And now he's going through this divorce, which is another expense. So it's a lot. And I don't think people realize the cost of not only managing two households, but the therapy, the emotional impact on your kids when you split them up. Like for me, when my dad was leaving that day, for the last time, my mom said to us, hey kids, your dad is leaving. He doesn't love us anymore. Or at least that's what I heard, or I thought I
Yeah.
heard.
Yeah.
But as a kid who's 9, who's a daddy's girl, you're like, what? And, I think my mom said that as like a jab to my dad to make him feel guilty. But as a 9-year-old hearing that, you're like,
What the
what?
hell?
Yeah, like, I thought my dad loved me. So that really messed with me. And, I think majority of people have some sort of emotional wound like that they don't even realize is affecting the way that they show up in relationships. So, and it's, oftentimes it's hidden from our view. It's like in our blind spot. So, it's kind of like someone saying, hey, Jeanell, every time I drive, I crash. It's like, well, do you check your blind spot? It's like, what blind spot? Right? So it's kind of like that. I'm really working with people to realize, to figure out why do they keep crashing the car, right? And they just keep messing it up until it's too late and then everything blows up. So, yeah.
No, that's interesting, and all the things that come along with divorce. Um, yeah, emotionally, financially. I think men probably. I'm just speaking from my own experience and guys that talk to like think about the financial stuff, like we split, then potentially lose half of what I own, and yada yada yada, whatever. If we have kids, child support, all that stuff. Um, but maybe could you talk about like earlier you're talking about marriage and you know you kind of alluded to like people get into marriages not knowing like um, what that really means,
Mm,
the level of commitment maybe. Could you
hmm
talk about that maybe and talk about what is really required for a marriage? Because I think you're right. Like I think in today's society we kind of go into it thinking, you know, this is it'll be a romantic kind of uh, story or whatever, a fantasy, and it'll just be they just think about what's going to be good for me about this marriage, not the things I'll have to sacrifice for the marriage.
Yeah, absolutely. So, sorry, I'm just making notes as we're talking. So, I think part of the problem is, we have marriage has been a certain expectation for thousands of years, and it's only been in the last few decades that things have changed, like the roles, the identities have changed, right? So, I think there's this confusion that we have. And then, we have some people that are still very, very traditional, right? Like in the Philippines, Women still, that's their main job is just to have babies. That's their whole purpose. Career, yeah, maybe, but really it's all about babies, right? And in the Philippines, having a mistress is normal,
Oh, really?
right? Yeah. So there's, there's all these different cultural differences. And so especially when we marry someone who's of a different culture, different background, different family values, there's going to be some clashing. Um, so I think that there's sort of that like bit of confusion around the traditional versus sort of the new age. And I think because most
Would
people,
Sorry to cut you off, but I
yeah,
just got to ask the question. So for in Philippines, is it accepted in terms of like the wife would accept it to have like a mistress?
yeah.
Hmm.
So like my grandma or my grandfather, the one that my mom just met twice, he had two families. He had a weekend family and he had a weekday family, but neither knew about each other. So, getting married, like the paper of getting married isn't as big in the Philippines. So there's a lot of people who are kind of just common law. And it's more for the costs of getting married. So they just kind of, call themselves married, have kids, but it's like never official. So you've got all these sort of like mixed families that aren't families, but kind of families, you know? So, yeah, so it gets pretty messy. And I think there's a lot of other cultures, like the Jamaican culture, where there's like a lot of half and step kids, and yeah, it's very interesting. But yeah, it's kind of normal. Like, I had a best friend in the Philippines, and she found out that her husband was, had sex with someone, and she was really upset. And he said, "Honey, I don't love her. I'm just having sex with her. Like, what's the big deal?" But that's kind of like that's the mentality to them. They're like, "Well, I'm a husband. I come home to you, but you know, sometimes I want to get some on the side and like what's wrong with that?"
He's probably
Right.
not the first guy in history to raise that argument, huh?
Yeah, especially when women have kids, they are less sexual for the most part. Right? I would say probably 95%. And even for me, like, I'm going through perimenopause, which is just before menopause, and I can, my sex drive has always been really strong. And I've noticed the last maybe 3 years, it takes work for me to get to that level again. A lot of preparation. But yeah, our bodies change, and sometimes men who have really high sex drives just can't handle that. And so sometimes they'll do those things. And again, culturally, if it's culturally accepted, and then there's places like Japan, my friend's from Japan, and he told me he's married, but he says, in Japan, he actually takes his wedding ring off. And I said, "Well, why do you do that?" He says, "Because in Japan, single women actually go after married men. They don't want another single man. They want married men." And I said, "Well, why is that?" He says, "Well, to them, married men equals stability, equals commitment, equals money." And I thought that's like so fascinating. I'd never heard of that before. But yeah, he tells me when he travels so that women leave him alone, he takes off his wedding ring.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Right. So I think,
Yeah.
going back to, marriage, I think that I heard this somewhere. So many people want to be married, but very few people want to be a husband or a wife.
Yeah. That's
And I think that's my ex-husband in a T. Like he loved the idea, playing house, we got kids and a dog, but he wasn't willing to do the things that husbands need to do to, make sure that his wife is taken care of, that she's happy, that she's, like what it takes to show up. And, my husband now, Mike, he has got this like so down pat. This man is a freaking rock star. Marriage is so easy with this man. He knows what I need before I need it. He's thoughtful. He's considerate. He always checks in with me. We make, important decisions together. We have hard conversations, but at the end of the day, we're always there to have fun and play and be best friends and just be life partners. And I think I think part of that reason why we do so well is we both came from really loving parents, where we got to see what it looks like to have difficult conversations in a respectful way, to work things out, to stand for your family even in those times when it's quote unquote boring or, just those ups and downs. And I think people expect their love lives to be almost like like a fairy tale, and
Fairy tale, yeah.
that's just not it. As far as, why people get married, a lot of what women tell me is that and I actually am guilty of this too, we fall in love with the potential we see, not with the actual person,
Hmm.
right? So let's think about, there's times when I see a very handsome man. And I look at him and I'm like, wow, he's really clean cut. He's got a nice suit on. He got a nice car. He looks like he's well established, stable. And when we think stable, we think financially, physically, mentally, right? We make up all these assumptions about people without actually looking at the facts. And a lot of people talk a really big game, right? But actions speak louder than words. And I think for a lot of women, if they were in the same position that I was, where I was like, I need to hurry up, I need to get married because my biological clock is ticking. Oftentimes in those moments, we're not doing our due diligence and going, okay, but is this guy actually going to be a great dad? Does this guy even want kids? Like, asking these really hard questions. And because so many of us don't know how to have, difficult conversations, we were never taught that. We just go, oh, you know what? We'll figure it out later. It's not important. We'll figure that out. We love each other. That's enough. And I call BS on that. So I think that if people, did the work, they knew who they were. I think a lot of people don't even know who they are, don't love themselves, but yet expect other people to love them and validate them. Um,
Could you explain that a little bit? Like people don't know who they are.
Yeah, I think that I think a lot of us are, depending on where we are in our lives, we feel like, okay, I know where I'm going, I know who I am. And then some life happens, whether that's a divorce, a death, or even just like a midlife crisis, where you wake up one day and you're like, hold on a second. Where am I? Who am I? What am I doing here? And how did I get here? And that was a little bit of like my journey, So before I became a coach, I was in corporate sales executive, traveling the world, selling software and, living the corporate life and then making a lot of money. And then one day I kind of was like, is this it for me? Really? Is it? And yeah, I just had a bit of a midlife crisis. I quit my job. I spent 6 months just soul searching, trying to figure out who I am. And that's how I found coaching. But I think a lot of people are not willing to listen to that little voice inside of them that's like, you're going the wrong way. We just keep going because it's familiar. And even
Yeah,
though we're
it's safe,
miserable, yeah,
familiar,
it's
safe.
safe, it's familiar. We
Might be
feel,
more logical, right? Might be more
yeah,
logical. Like, oh, I got this job. I can stay here. I can
it's
retire or whatever. It's
exactly. I
logical.
got this pension. I mean, I'm good at, and this was me. I'm good at my job. I make lots of money. They treat me well. And yet my heart is like crying for like, I felt trapped. I felt like in a very masculine world, I was like the only female and I had to be someone that I wasn't. And I think as we get older, that inner voice gets louder and louder. And so now, here I am in my late 40s and I'm still trying to figure out who I am in the world. But I think that, if we don't know who we are, here's the thing. If we don't know who we are, we can't set boundaries with people. And
Mhm.
people will just treat us however they want to treat us. And we don't even know what's right and wrong because we don't even know for ourselves what that is. And, we say, well, I want to be happy. I want to fall in love. I want to forgive. I want to let go of resentment, but we can't give to another what we don't have for ourselves. How can we forgive our mom and dad or, that lover who hurt us if if we don't even know forgiveness for ourselves? And so we put a lot of pressure or expectation on other people to figure out their crap so that we feel better, but we're not willing to do the work. Or maybe we just don't know how to do the work. Like we see the problem, we feel the pain, but we're like, okay, what do I do? Do I breathe? Do I go see a psychiatrist? Do I see a counselor? Do I read a
Yeah.
book? Right? And
What the
so,
hell do I do?
yeah, yeah.
Where do
So
I start?
that's
Screw
it.
it. I'll just go watch Netflix and go back to my job.
Exactly. And I think that's, going back to divorce, I think that's a lot of the time is they're like, well, I don't want to get divorced, but what other option do we have? Because we've been trying what we think is quote unquote everything. Nothing's working. He tells me he's going to change, but yet he hasn't. So that must mean he doesn't love me. Therefore, I'm going to leave. But that's actually not true. Most people want to change, they just don't know how. They just don't have someone to say, hey, this is where you're going wrong, buddy. Or, hey, this is where you're self-sabotaging. Or, hey, why are you shutting down? Like, do you notice you're doing that? And do you know what that
Yeah.
does to her? Right? So I think they just sometimes men need someone to just kind of be the voice that should be from the woman. But I think a lot of women expect expect men to be more like women, and I have to constantly remind women like men don't think like you. Just because that's your common sense is not his common sense. And
Yeah.
so it's a lot of educating people and getting people to be humble and getting people to understand just humanity in general and having more grace and patience. Because I think there's a lot of arrogance and a lot of ego for
Ego.
sure.
Right. What What do you think the differences are between men's common sense and women's common sense? Maybe like women first and then compared to men. Like what are the things that women you think
Yeah.
assume that men should know that they don't
Yeah.
or they don't pick up on or whatever?
So women are generally wired to do a million things.
Hmm.
Like that's just science. Like the way our brains are wired are just it's just different. We can do 10 million things in our brain at once. And that's why women are always like, right? Where I think with men, men can kind of compartmentalize. It's like, okay, task one, finish that. Task two, like it's easier for them to do that. And so one of the things I've also learned about men is, for example, when they come home from work, don't ask them to go do stuff right away. He needs time to sit and decompress, maybe play video games for 20 minutes. And then after that, now you can ask him to do stuff. But if you, as soon as he comes through the door and you're like, you need to do this and start nagging him, he's not, it's not going to work. So things like that, where women, we're the opposite. We can come right through the door and start cooking, take care of the kid, take the shower all at the same time. And so I think we think that men are like that. Or
Hmm.
like as women, we're the nurturers, right? So we know what the baby needs. We're very intuitive. We can tell, right? Where
Yeah.
again, we expect men to be that way. It's like, hey, can't you see your child is crying? Can't you go and pick up the kid or go play with your kid or duh? It's kind of like that. But it's like, well, no, he's thinking over here and you're over here and you're not communicating and you're thinking that he's, doesn't care or he's on his phone because he's checking out, but really that's not the reality of it. But if people don't know how to communicate or women disrespect their men, he's not going to actually be honest with her. He's just going to be like, give her the middle finger and shut down, right?
Right.
So,
Right. Like feel disrespected and then shut down.
yeah. And I think the shutdown is, I think for most men, the default. I'm actually quite masculine myself, and that's my default too. So I've had to really get conscientious about it. And my husband is just so great to be like, "Hello, can you talk to me?" Um, so yeah, he's the talker, and when we're in a fight, he's the one chasing me and being like, "We need to talk about this." I'm the one who's like, "Leave me alone. I need to just go for a walk. I need to decompress because if you keep bothering me, I'm going to say something that is not going to be so nice. So let's just cool down." Right? But see, I know that about myself. I know that. So I can kind of put a pause in that And that's again another tip that I teach people is like, hey, if you can feel your emotions starting to bubble and you can feel that like breaking point coming, and you know that you become super angry or you see red and you become Hulk Hogan, not Hulk Hogan, what's his name? The Green
Mhm.
Hulk. The
Yeah.
Green Hulk.
Yeah.
Um, just stop it before you get there. Because I know I get really mean and cleaning up your mess takes so much work that if you just shut your mouth, breathe, go and like deal with yourself and then come back when and this is what I tell women because when we go into our emotional I like to call it crazy town, we're not ourselves. We become this totally different version of ourselves, which is nasty and mean and so I know that about myself. As a kid, I got bullied a lot. And so my mouth, I'm 4'11". So my mouth has always been my weapon.
Mm.
And so when I feel like I'm being backed into a corner, my mouth is the first thing that tries to it's my coping mechanism.
Start
And
popping off,
yeah,
retaliating.
yeah, I get pretty. Oh yeah, I can hurt with my words, and so I have to be very careful. And an area of my life that I have to constantly work on because I talk to myself that way too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like we all have work to do. And so when I work with my couples or with my clients, I say, listen, I'm not perfect. Like I'm still, I'm on my own journey. The only difference between you and I is that I have tools. I have an awareness that you don't have. And instead of me being stuck in that low vibration of anger, sadness, guilt, fear, and all that for, let's say, a normal person would be in there for, say, a week or two or a month or years, I know how to pull myself out of it in a few minutes. Right. And so I think that's part of it is because life is always going to throw crap at us. That's never, it's to say, oh, I'm just waiting for life to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. And so I think what we need to do is become more resilient, become wiser, have the weapons, secret, whatever you want, ammunition
Weapons of mass
order to
destruction.
deal, yeah, in order to deal with whatever life is going to give you. And like I said, people are people. And we just have to be okay that people are the way they are. And sometimes they're good people, and sometimes they're people are that are going to hurt you. But if you don't know who you are and you don't know how to speak up for yourself or know how to say no, even though your heart is like, oh, but I love this person, you're going to always get caught up in the wrong relationships and be in places that you don't necessarily belong or are going to be appreciated. So I think, being able to say no and loving yourself enough to say no and walk away is really important.
What would you say? What would you say is the biggest thing? So it sounds like you work like mostly with men. You work with women too, but a lot of men.
Yes, it's funny, since COVID, I've been getting a lot more men. Yeah, I would probably say 50-50, but between you and I prefer working.
Just me and
I
you talking.
prefer working.
No one
I
else is
prefer
gonna hear this.
no one else. But yeah, I actually prefer working with men. For many reasons. I think there's a lot of people supporting women, which is great. I'm just more, I think my personality and my communication style is more of a man's,
Style.
especially style, yeah. And because I came from corporate, I'm really focused on things like solutions and strategies and goals and that kind of like action focused
Yeah.
where I think a lot of women they kind of just want to talk about their feelings. I'm not that kind of person. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, sure, I want to know about your feelings, but not to just sit there and sit in the smelly swamp of the past and like I just know. I'm just like, let's get out of there. Let's let's move forward. Let's do things that are fun. Let's stop living in these people have lived in the past for the last 30, 40, 50 years. It's like, why? We don't need to do more of that. Let's get out of there. So that's really where I feel like I thrive.
What are some actionable goals?
Yeah,
Some
because
good stuff.
what's the point of, like, okay, great. My dad cheated on my mom. Okay, great. That hurt. Okay, great. Now what?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do with that information? Knowing how you feel about the situation isn't going to make you feel better. So to me, I'm like, okay, so what was that? Why were you hurting? Okay, you made up the story that your dad doesn't love you. Okay, great. Is that true? No, it's not true, but I made that up. So one of the things I teach is, just because you believe something doesn't make it true.
Mhm.
And so it's like almost dismantling all of those ideas that we've had. And as a woman, as an Asian woman, as a Filipino Catholic Asian woman, there's a lot of old beliefs and traditions that are, that keep us small. And so it's, constantly challenging those ideals. And not because it's right or wrong, but just that's what I need in order to find my freedom and my peace. And at the end of the day, I think that's what we all want, isn't it? Just to find peace. So whatever that looks like, that's really my goal for my clients is for them to find peace.
Right. And that's a good goal. Um, I wanted to ask, what is like, I think you've mentioned a lot of different things that you work with men. Um, what is like the main, if you had to boil it down to one or two things, what is like the main things that you help men with that you think they struggle with from what you've seen?
I typically work with the nice guys. You know what I
Okay.
mean? The nice guys. And typically the nice guys are with a not so nice girl. Um, so these guys typically are people pleasers. They don't know how to speak up for themselves. They feel alone, they feel unappreciated, they feel disrespected. And yet they love their partner so much, so
Rock the boat.
they don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah.
But yet they're being treated so unfairly and they just don't know how to, it's like everything they do almost makes things worse even though what they want is to make it better. So I think part of it is again going back to like who are you, and is it who you want to be? Because sometimes we know who we are, it's like but I don't like this person. Or, I'm too much like my dad and I hated my dad, so I want to be a different person. But again, we are all who we are is the sum of all of our experiences, our parents, our upbringing, our culture, right? And so if that's all we know, even though we know it's wrong, if we have no one else to say, well, here's another way, then we're just going to keep repeating the same crap, right? It's like I meet so many people whose dads were alcoholics. And they hated the fact that their dad was an alcoholic. And yet they've become an alcoholic. And they hate that they're an alcoholic, but that's what they saw when they were growing up. Dad dealing with his problems by drinking. So it's all just patterns. It's all patterns. So you got to break the pattern. But if you don't know you have the pattern, how do you know what you're going to break? So
Right.
that's actually, I'm going to use that. That was actually well said. Okay.
Yeah.
Note to self.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've just seen so many miracles and men just transforming before my eyes in such a short amount of time. I work a lot with infidelity. And in my experience, it's usually the man who's the unfaithful one. And, oftentimes I'll have people come in my sessions. It's the first session and she just found out that he cheated like yesterday. So it's all very fresh, and there's rage and anger and bitterness, like all of those emotions, right? And within like two phone calls or two sessions or three sessions, and watching everything, that boat just turn around and seeing them starting to look at each other again, laugh, make jokes, have sex again. To me, that's just like, oh, it's the best feeling. And here's the thing too is, when couples are not doing well, it doesn't matter how young your children are, they feel that.
Yeah.
I had a couple who was struggling. They had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and when they first came to me, they fought a lot. They were Italian, so they fought a lot. Very, very passionate arguing.
Yeah.
But they told me that their kids, whenever they would hug, their kids would actually come into the middle and push them apart. No. It's like, oh, what's that about? And then as they started to work on their relationship, usually I think it was like around week 6, they were telling me that their kids started to behave very differently. So
Wow.
yeah, even though, and these are 2 and 5 year olds, like they don't know what's going on really, but they can feel it. And so I think it's really important for us to, especially when we're thinking about leaving a relationship that involve kids, we really got to think that through really well and do everything we can to not only save the relationship, but save the children from years and years of emotional trauma.
Right.
Yeah.
What's maybe to end off, what's one thing you think uh, men can do to better their relationship? If you had to get a broad stroke piece of advice.
Communication, 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 and communication.
Okay.
I think also, okay, so there's 2 things, communication and what was the other thing? Oh yeah, and communication. But there was something else. Okay, well, I'll start with communication. I think so many people weren't taught how to communicate. Especially if we had fathers that didn't communicate. I think
Yeah.
it's really hard to break that pattern. But you know what? It's really every couple is different, and being able to have those difficult conversations about what is wanted, needed, and expected is always missing. That's what I find. I find that people
Yeah.
get married and they don't talk about where are we going to live? How many kids are we going to have? What's going to be our religion? How often are we going to have sex? Like all these things that are everyday things people don't talk about. And then they get married
Right.
and then they have the conversation. And then it's like, oh, you want to live in the city or you want to live on the East Coast and I want to live on the West Coast? Oh, well, how's that going to work? And then they get divorced. And it's like, why didn't you talk about this before?
Right.
Communication is a big thing, but it's hard when women communicate the way they communicate, which is, there's always this like tone, right? How do you deal with being triggered by that tone? So a lot of emotional intelligence is required to kind of navigate that and to also say to the girl, hey, I don't like how you're talking to me right now. I don't deserve it. Can you please stop that?
Hmm.
Most men just take it.
Yeah.
Right? They just shut down, they take it, and then all this like,
Anger.
anger and resentment like builds inside. And that instead of just saying, hey, you know what? That wasn't cool, dude. You say you love me and yet you talk to me like I'm not your dad. Is what
Yeah.
I would say. I'm not your dad. Don't talk to me like that.
Yeah.
Right? But if you don't know who you are, you don't have that, that backbone or that like confidence, you're going to attract someone who is usually very manipulative and domineering and disrespectful, and someone who's usually, what's the word? Has issues,
Yeah.
than someone who's really healthy and mature and ready to have a equal partnership. But to your point about sacrifice, yeah, real, when I look at my own marriage, and not to say that my marriage is everybody else, how everyone else's marriage should be, but I think what we do really well is we talk about what we want from each other. Um, I have learned that anything that I acknowledge of my husband, he will do more of. And so this is what I tell to women. I said, men just want to be appreciated. So if there's a certain activity or a task or anything that you want your husband or partner to do more of, acknowledge him for that. Let him know,
Yeah.
like today, for example, I was coming on with you at 10 a.m. I said to my husband, hey, hun, I've got a podcast. Can you please make sure that I wake up at 9 a.m.? He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. I get up at 9. He's like, oh, by the way, I made you coffee. And by the way, I turned on the heater in your office so that when you go in there, it's nice and warm. And I said, oh. Thank you, honey. I so appreciate. I gave him a hug. I gave him a kiss. I said, "You are the best husband in the world." And he's got this big smile on his face, and he's like, "Aw, thanks." And I get like he feels so seen. He feels so appreciated. And guess what? He's gonna do that every day for me now. Because he
Yeah,
knows, hey, when I do that good thing, Janelle like gives me love. And my husband's love language is physical touch.
yeah,
So as long as he gets a hug and a kiss and a I love you, that's all he needs from me. And so this is what I'm trying to teach women is like men don't need a lot. You just need to give them the right kind of love that speaks to them, whether that be physical or quality time or whatever. You got him. Marriage doesn't have to be that hard. I think we make it harder on ourselves because we let our egos and our pride get in the way. And the one thing I'll tell you about my husband has zero ego. My husband has no problem saying I'm sorry. He has no problem telling me he's sad. He's just so straight with me and so just honest. And so we can just have this amazing life together without all the extra drama and BS that most couples deal with. It's pretty great.
um, I gotta say, I couldn't, I can't help not thinking about it that men are kind of like, they're like golden retrievers. Like they
Yeah,
just want to do things for you, and they
they
just want to be
do.
appreciated, say, "Good boy, good job,"
Yeah. Oh my
and
gosh. Well, you
and
know what
then
I think about? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. What you're saying?
but that's pretty much it. I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, that
Yeah.
appreciation thing. But I think also too, this is a big thing that I kind of seen. Just think that if there's a lack of appreciation, even if it's just a word, a thank you, a hug, a kiss, and and you do something and it's like and it's just expected. Like there's like it's not it's not it's not verbally appreciated and it's like expected.
Yeah.
Then men just feel like, okay, fuck this, whatever.
Yeah.
Like you just
I
expect me
think,
to do everything, like just
yeah.
to see what I do. I think
Yeah.
women probably feel the same way when they do things right, and it's not seen or appreciated.
I think less than men.
Hmm.
I think women just in general, I think we're just wired to just do it, not for appreciation, but for survival.
Yeah,
Right? Where I think men, it's like, honey, look what I did. I fixed the thing. Right? And, I get, honestly, when I work with couples, I get mad at women a lot. I'm like, how do you expect your husband to, you know, um, satisfy your needs when A, you don't tell him what you want, B, you expect him to read your mind, and C, you don't even appreciate it. And, so what women will say to me is like, well, he doesn't appreciate me. And I said, well, do you appreciate him? And then they say to me, well, why should I appreciate him? He didn't do anything. And then my retort is, why does he have to do something to be appreciated? Do you appreciate your kids? Do your kids have a job? Do your kids do anything for you? No, they make a mess, but you love them, you appreciate them. So why is your husband any different? You're talking about the golden retriever. I think of when I'm with men, even my husband, there's moments when I can see his like vulnerability. And what I see is a little 5-year-old boy. So like when my husband was growing up, he was quite overweight from the age of 5 to probably 20. And so it really affected his self-confidence. He asked a lot of girls out, and he always got rejected. And so for him, getting that validation is so important. And there's
yeah,
moments when I can see the little 5-year-old in him, the one that just wants to be hugged, the one wants to be told that he's enough, the one that's told that he's handsome and right? And
yeah,
I can see that. I can almost like feel that 5-year-old. And so when he's like, I did this really nice thing, and I can see he just wants to be, just seen and like validated. I'm just like, of course, and I think some women are like, he's not 5, he's not a child. Why should I talk to him like that? But it's like, they just don't get it. And I just think that, I don't know if it's a cultural thing, I don't know, but I know for a fact that as soon as the wife does that, everything changes,
Hmm.
and I know, like, again, from with my husband, all my husband will go to the moon and back for me. This man will do anything for me, and all I need to do to maintain that. Like I said, we've been married for almost 20 years, and it has never changed. Our relationship has been a 10 out of 10 the entire time. And I think it's because we have these certain, I don't know, agreements, I guess, in our relationship that
Values, maybe.
keep the fire. Values, but I think values is not necessarily an action-based thing because you can have values and sit on your ass and do nothing.
Yeah,
I think what there is effort.
yeah, yeah,
Effort is one, and just the agreement that we're in this together. And we're not just gonna coast through life and like, oh yeah, you again. But really, like every day, wake up and be like, hey, you, how's it going? What are we gonna do
yeah,
today? Like, really
right,
just creating a life together. Hey, what are we doing next week? Hey, we should do that thing. What do you think? We had our
yeah,
anniversary actually last weekend, and we went for a romantic dinner. We went and did paint night. We went for a couples massage. Like we do everything together, and it's just we're like playmates. It's the best life ever.
it really is effort, isn't it? Like it's the conscious choice to choose to like, I'm going to show up to this relationship, like
Yeah,
put the best foot forward and try to help this person and try to develop and continue our the romantic part of a relationship, just like, but it's effort every day,
it is effort. And I
or
think
it's a decision
also,
at least, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And listen, like my husband still plays video games, but he picks his time and place for that.
Hmm.
So we know each other's schedule. So, for example, right now I said, "Hey, honey, going into podcast." He's like, "Okay, great. I'll make sure that the TV isn't too loud but we kind of know what each other's doing. So he knows when I'm out or I'm, working, that's his time for himself to do whatever he wants to do. And then when I'm off work, that's when we do our stuff.
Hmm.
And my husband's actually also a professional musician. So,
Oh,
3, 4 days a week, he's got his own hobby, he's got his own thing he does, and I do my own thing. So I think that's another thing too, is you want to make sure that you have a life together, but you also have a life apart.
yeah,
Because one person has a life, the other one doesn't, then the other one's like, when are you gonna come home? You don't spend time with me. Blah, 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 blah.
yeah,
Because they don't have their own life and they're waiting. Their life is the other person. And I don't think that's healthy either.
right, right. Well, I think there's been a lot of wisdom here today.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you very much for coming on and sharing all this stuff.
My pleasure. I hope this was helpful for some of your listeners.
No, I think it will be, for sure. Where can people find you? Do you have a website or social medias or?
Yes, I do. My website is www.jeanellgreene.com. That's JeanellGreene.com. If anybody wants to talk to me, I offer a 1 hour complimentary session, no strings attached. And I help people create a playbook for their life. And I have a 12-week program that I walk people through, whether they're coming as a couple and want to work on their relationship, or if they just want to come in as an individual who are saying, like, listen, I want to be a better me. I don't know how. Show me.
From the sounds of it, she may be able to sort you out in 60 minutes. I don't know.
You know what? If people are, and this is why I love working with men. Men are like,
Yeah,
Janelle, just tell me how to fix the problem. That's what I
yeah,
love. Guys who are going to take action. That's why I love working with men. Because once they're committed and they're willing to do the work, things move so fast. I've had people who said to me, Janelle, 1 hour with you was better than 5 years of therapy.
yeah. Action steps, right?
That's right.
And that would be the difference between a coach and a therapist.
Exactly. Yeah. And typically, therapists and counselors are not allowed to give advice. They're there just to listen, which is great for some people. That's what they need. I just work with a different kind of person. I work with a sort of the more ambitious, ones that really want to create a big life. And I have to say the saddest thing for me that I hear from people who are the ones that say, I am miserable, I am unhappy, I am alone, and there's nothing I want to do about it.
Yeah,
And
that
I'm
is,
okay, and they're like, I'm okay to live like this for the rest of my life. I'm like, what a waste.
I know, and it's, you can't want it for them. People have to want to do it themselves, you know?
Yeah. And I get it. It's hard to change. Change is scary. Looking in the mirror is scary. Admitting your flaws and doing the healing work can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. Healing can be fun. It can actually be really empowering. It's just depending on who you work with. And
Mhm.
yeah, there might be some tears. Yeah, it might sting a little bit, but man, if you can just, unpack this sort of like armor that we've been, this burden that we've been carrying around for years and years and years and get some freedom, maybe we wouldn't be so tired. Maybe we wouldn't be so depressed. Maybe we would actually go and like live a life that we actually want rather than the one that's given to us by default. So that's what I'm really passionate about.
The upside is more than worth it doing the work.
Yeah, I think that we're all here on this earth for a reason. I don't think we just come here randomly. I think we're here to fulfill something and to make the most out of our time here. So that's what I hope people figure out.
Well, thank you for coming on, Jeanell. I appreciate it.
Okay. My pleasure.
I'm going to put her stuff down in the description. And thank you.
You're welcome.
Talk, talk soon. Thank you. Bye bye.